Hi there, listeners.
Today we're brought to you by Yokkao, the world's most prolific Muay Thai brand.
That's right. We're so excited to be teaming up with Yokkao to bring you the best Muay Thai gear possible.
Honestly, mate, as an MMA coach, it took me a long time to find pads that don't wear down after just a few months, but at the moment, my trusty Yokkaos aren't going anywhere.
Oh, I know the feeling, man. Getting kicked hard with pads smashing your forearms, it hurts.
Yeah, it's the absolute worst, especially when you've got to do it every day.
If there's one thing you should never compromise on, it's martial arts gear.
100%, and Yokkao has the best quality of training gear, gloves, shorts and clothes as well.
They're amazing quality and great value for money too.
And Yokkao are offering you guys 10% off any purchase by using code CombatCasuals10 at the checkout.
That's Combat Casuals 10 with no spaces.
Get yourself some top quality Muay Thai gear and save some cash. Hi and welcome to the Combat Casuals podcast.
If you're a fan of mixed martial arts and all things related, stick around.
We'll be talking about past and future events,
Analysing fights,
and trying to provide you with the opportunity to get involved in the ultimate fighting conversation.
We've been friends for too long now,
And we always have the most bizarre conversations.
so we thought, hey, why not make a podcast?
I'm Dustin,
I'm Ian.
and we're the Combat Casuals.
That's fair enough. I just think everyone's kind of, well, not just that their goals are different, but everyone's sense of achievement is different. Like Lily, whenever we're training, like I can just go and do, like a weightlifting session,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily get out of breath or particularly sweaty or anything, but I still very much feel like I've done something. But she feels like she hasn't done hard work unless she's like, really heavy breathing and sweaty, and I'm like, I guess everyone just rates their success differently.
Yeah, completely.
And I guess it does depend on your goal, but
Yeah,
it
completely.
is interesting that people measure it differently.
It
Like
is.
you see them t-shirts in the gym where it'll be like a plain grey t-shirt, and then if you sweat enough, it comes through and it says like you can go home now. And it's like, well, I don't sweat at the gym, so not much anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Also,
So I guess I'll be there a long time.
What if it's just a hot day? You'd be like, okay, I'm turning
Might
round.
just be a hot day.
I'm going
Yeah.
home now. Like,
You get halfway walking to the gym,
Yeah.
and you're like,
oh, good.
well done,
I
me.
did it. I get that, man. Like, I personally, like, it's very hard to stay motivated, and I think I say this all the time when I'm talking to like other people about doing sport. Like I talk to in my work, I deal with students a lot, and they're always asking me about like training and things like that. And I say to them, like, I actually actively hate cycling. I hate running, and like, or I perhaps exaggerate it a bit. I don't hate them, but I do it because it's necessary. Like, I don't do it because like, oh man, I really love running. Whereas Simone, she enjoys running. Like, she will be like,
It's mad.
I like
Who are
going.
these people?
Yeah, I know, right? And she's always like, let's go for a run. I just genuinely don't like running, but I do it because it's good for my cardio. It's good, like, just to keep active, particularly during lockdown when you're not getting to go do like I haven't got a chance to do jiu-jitsu for a year now, and it's keeping, I guess, a mind on doing these things, doing weights, doing kettlebells, doing cycling, doing running is a good way to keep my mind set on doing sport, because without it, it's just like, oh man, what am I actually going to do without it? It's kind of like in Parks and Rec, the Chris Traeger, who's like, if I don't move, I'll die, I'm like, if I don't do some form of activity, sports activity a day, I'll die,
I think like, martial arts has been hit hard by COVID anyway, because it's all close contact, isn't it? But jiu-jitsu especially, I mean,
big time.
Contact does not come any closer than jiu-jitsu.
No.
Like I've been more intimate with some of my training partners than I've been with Lily. Do you know what I mean? It is very close quarters.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is, man. It definitely is. It's hard to think, like, I'm in a lot of chats, and I think when this started with COVID, people were joking about how to do COVID with jiu-jitsu, and it's just like, there is no way of doing that. There's just no way.
Oh, do you remember that John Danaher video though of him grappling the ghost?
Mate, grappling his demons. That's,
that was so funny. If anyone hasn't seen it, I'm sure it'd be easy to find.
Yeah.
If you search John Danaher on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's showing you how you can practice takedowns and various jiu-jitsu moves, but on nobody, just like you would shadow box, but shadow jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, he's a very well accomplished
he's
jiu-jitsu
amazing,
practitioner and coach, but I'm still not sure about that one myself.
Yeah, I mean, when it started, my team in London, Wave, we had a lot of online classes where we were doing that sort of stuff, but with my coach Lorenzo in front of us, and they were really good. They're really good. But it doesn't beat the real thing, does it? You can't just keep.
Of course not.
Yeah, you can't be. I remember doing. I was doing, I guess, pummeling on my couch, and I was like, "This is
on your couch."
Yeah, and I was just like, "This."
On what part of the couch?
I think it was
like the arms.
Yeah. I think it was using the arms to try and. To be fair, there was a lot of outside ways of doing stuff, which if you hear it, you go, "What?" But when you do it, it's like, "Oh yeah, this does simulate it actually pretty well." But it just doesn't beat the real thing. It's you'll be grappling with somebody at open mats, and they'll do something that you're completely not used to, and you're just never going to get that by just going through the motions, and it's trying to keep motivated, I guess. Doing the weights at home and doing kettlebells and stuff like that is something I do to keep my mind on it. But I tell you, I just if credit to people who just like cycling and just like running. Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't be.
I'm envious of those people, man.
Me too. Because I cycle every day to work and cycle home, and the only reason I do that is because I don't want to take a bus. And it's cheaper as well. Of course, it's cheaper. London travel is crazy expensive, and if I had a job literally on my street, I would just walk there. And if it was near me, I would just walk. I wouldn't cycle if I didn't have to. You know what I mean? But credit to some of my friends, one in particular, he cycles every day, and not every day, every weekend he goes cycling with a friend of his, and we're talking 40 to 50 kilometers, crazy long cycles all the way through London. I see them on Strava all the time, these crazy long cycles, and I'm just I cannot be bothered to do that. He's invited me so many times, and I'm just I don't want to do that.
I like cycling for one. That's one thing I do like. So, for example, I mean, you remember I did with my brother. We cycled from Geneva to Nice.
Yes, I remember. Yeah,
we took a big time. But for me, cycling like that, it's an occasional thing. Do you know what I mean? And when I do it occasionally, I love it. I would never do it every weekend. No. Jesus, that gets old so fast. And with running, my brother, my other brother, he is a fantastic long distance runner. But he does it because he loves it. It's not he feels he has to do it or anything. He just loves it. And I'm not sure if he runs every single day, but I think it's pretty damn close. When I check his Strava, it's pretty much 6 days a week at least.
Yeah.
And I just think, I don't know. I mean, it's fair enough because, more often than not, I'll be at the gym at least 6 days a week training.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll spend an hour easily, and then when I ask him, how long, he runs, I don't know, a 10K, and it's that's 30, 40 minutes for him, and it's oh well, in terms of time, that actually makes a lot of sense. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't. You're not actually really going out of your way that much. But to me, running's just horrific. I don't get how anyone enjoys it. I was good at it when I was younger, but I hate it.
I genuinely hate running too. Again, I do it because I just want to keep a good level of cardio, but at the moment, I'm just been hitting a wall real bad. And as I say, I think it is just a massive psychology thing. It's because I don't like it. And it's I could spend hours doing jiu-jitsu. I could spend hours doing it. I could be back before COVID. There were evening classes. I was at them for 2 hours. Now I look back and I'm I should have gone every single night. I should have gone
with jiu-jitsu. You don't even notice that you're tired, really. You know what I mean? Because there's other things to focus on. It's well, you can either when you're doing it and you're in your head, you can either be I'm really tired, I need to stop and have a drink or a breather, or you can be oh, hang on, this guy's around my neck. Maybe I should focus more on that.
Yeah, and it can be a big social thing as well, because you're there chatting to people whilst you're doing it, and particularly at open mats, a lot of the time you're chatting to friends, you're chatting to people, and then you roll and, simulate getting killed by one of them, and then then go back to chatting again.
That's it. Well, since I quit my office job, the gym now, and namely my studio where I coach, that's almost my entire social life now.
Yeah.
So not crying about it. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people have been hit a lot worse than me by COVID. But for me, obviously I'm not doing my job anymore, but then I'm also not seeing any friend, like everything's been taken. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's my hobby and my social life and my job. Like
yeah.
everything's gone all at once, and it's like, whoa, like what do I do? Like, what does everybody do with their lives when they don't have a job or any friends? It's like, wow. So we got a dog. Now that sounds really harsh. That sounds like we got a COVID dog. That's not the case at all. I was pressuring Lily for like years, to be honest, to get a dog, and then she finally caved, and now.
No, that's good, man.
Now we're happy.
But welcome everybody to the podcast. It was like a brief chat about how we've been finding lockdown training, I guess, and how what we've been doing to try and like help ourselves through that. And I think that's something we're definitely going to be talking about today, and also answering some of your questions as well, I think, from the last few podcasts, which is going to be great.
Yeah, that's the thing I'd definitely like to get to right away, is because some of these questions we got asked, before we even recorded our first episode. People said, "Oh, you should talk about this," or people will ask me a question, and I say, "You know what? I'll hold on to that, and I'll answer it in the podcast." And some of these people have been waiting weeks for me to reply now.
I love this idea of this one person, this one listener who we have. That guy, thank you for listening. You know who you are. That one listener who's asked every one of these questions, and every week has sat there being like, "Oh, they're gonna do it this
one of these days." To be fair, they'll probably listen to this one, and it'll be 10 minutes in, and they'll be like, "What are they? When are they gonna?"
And we've lost our one listener after that 10 minutes.
Yeah, and he's gone. Yeah.
That's it. He's gone.
Sorry, Steve.
No, it's cool, man. Well, we will answer your questions. Like, we're gonna do it.
Yeah. So right, we might as well crack on then. So I've got them written down here. So the first one. Obviously, it was a big point of controversy very recently. It always has been, but about the UFC gloves. Obviously, there's some degree of the gloves resulting in more eye pokes in the UFC than in other mixed martial arts organisations. Because a lot of fighters complain. Just for anyone who isn't familiar with the debate that's going on, a lot of fighters complain that the UFC style of gloves that they use tends to hold the fighter's hand quite flat, encouraging them to have their fingers poking out towards the opponent, whereas in some other organisations, the glove naturally curves your hand closer to a fist, so it's much less likely that you're going to poke someone in the eye. So people are, kind of calling for the UFC to change the gloves, but the UFC have used the same gloves for years and years and years now, and I think they're quite reluctant to change.
I think it's like because they look... It's a weird one, because they seem reluctant to change on the gloves, but they're very happy to change on, I guess, another subject matter, which we will get to either this week or a few weeks down the line, with like the Reebok, the Venom deals, the clothing deals. They're very keen to change that stuff, but I think maybe it's an aspect of it that the gloves are quite iconic. The gloves are that look, and it's a difficult one because they do naturally do that. There's obviously fighters like John Jones who are going to be looking to poke in the eye. I think he actively does that. I know people who...
I do.
Yeah, I know people who love John Jones go, "Oh no, he doesn't, but he does. He looks for the eye pokes. That's what he's going for." I think there's other fighters who don't do that, and it's just a complete accident. We saw recently with Leon Edwards, I don't think he intended to do that. I think that was just a complete freak accident, because that
was gruesome, man. Like half of his finger was missing inside Bilal Muhammad's eye.
Awful. I feel for Bilal Muhammad as well, because they're not getting that rematch. They're doing...
That's brutal. It is brutal. When I saw that, I was like, that's bang out of order. Imagine, because it was ruled a no contest, wasn't it?
It was.
But then he was literally just like, "Well, I was winning, wasn't I?" And it's like, no, you can't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until the fight's finished, you can't say that. Look at there's endless fights where this is the case. But look at Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen. Anderson was losing the whole fight, and then boom, triangle. It's like, bam. You can't just can't just say, "Oh, well, I was winning."
And I feel bad because I actually really like Leon Edwards. I think he comes across as a really great guy, and he
does seem sound. He's been done over by the UFC.
He's been done over so much.
They just don't look after him. No. He's such a good talent, but they don't look after him, and now he's trapped in this weird position where he's a massive threat to everyone in that division, but he doesn't get fights because he's not a massive name. So it's a big risk for anyone to fight him, because if they lose, people will be like, "Well, who the fuck is that he lost to?"
Yeah.
Like all the casual fans will be like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah.
And then if he,
I feel for him, man. And him versus Nate Diaz is a really interesting fight, because if he beats Nate Diaz, he goes straight into title contention, probably going to get the shot because Kobe Covington.
Do you think so?
Well, I think Covington turned him down. He turned him down. So I think if you turn down fights, you shouldn't get title shots.
But like at the moment, like who the fuck is Nate Diaz? Do you know what I mean? Oh, that geezer that fought Conor McGregor.
He's still
like,
big. He's still big. He draws in people to watch. I know it's casuals as we are.
Sure.
He draws in people.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm not talking about in terms of a draw. Like people want to tune in to watch Nate Diaz, but in terms of the ranking and in terms of Leon breaking the top 5 in the division, like who the fuck is Nate Diaz? Like, where is he? Do you know what I mean?
I agree with you in terms of like a purist. You know, like Nate Diaz is not top 5, but you beat Nate Diaz. A lot of casuals like us, and not to slag off casuals, it's important that we get more people interested in watching mixed martial arts. But there's going to be a lot of people who watch Nate Diaz. They'll see Leon Edwards beat him and then go, oh, okay, this guy, you know. But I think Leon has to do it in a really big way. He has to go out there and like go to finish him, because I think if he just grinds him out, which he has a great style for that, but if he goes to grinding him out, I appreciate his style quite a lot. But I think a lot of people will be like, okay. You know, he has to go out there and like go for it and try and finish him. But it's an interesting one, and we'll see. I mean, but it kind of links back to what we were saying with the gloves and Bilal Muhammad.
I was about to say, so in conclusion...
Yeah. Sorry, Steve, we've ignored your question. I feel for Bilal Muhammad because he's not getting that opportunity to rematch Leon Edwards. And I think Leon Edwards could be on the cusp of a title shot if he beats Nate Diaz. So I don't see that happening anytime soon now. Like, literally, I do not see them rematching over a fluke, really unfortunate eye poke. And I do think they need to do something about the gloves. I know Justin Gaethje's coach talked at great length with Joe Rogan on his podcast about his glove design. And I can't remember exactly why the UFC... It's not that they've turned it down, but they just don't seem as keen to change it. And maybe it is because the iconic look of the gloves. But I just think these gloves are designed... It's just how rigid they are. You can see, like, when you see fighters like try and hold a fist, they obviously can do it, but it still looks like their hands are getting pulled to a straight position. You know, and it's going to lead to things like, you know, Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic fights. They both poked each other in the eyes multiple times. You know, and again, I don't think they did it intentionally. I like to think they didn't do it intentionally. I like both those guys, but I think the gloves do need to change. I don't know what you think.
No, I agree, mate. It just seems like a really simple solution to an annoying issue. Like, why would you not? Why would you not? I mean, I think it's like a UFC pride issue. Do you know what I mean? They're like, no, there are gloves. We've been using them for years. It's like, yeah, well, things change, man. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't born with a mobile phone. I have one now because it's convenient. Do you know what I mean? Like, things change. Like, let's evolve. Let the sport evolve. Like, if there's a better way of doing something, why are you fighting that?
Yeah. And I think the gloves, from what I can see from Gaethje's coach, those gloves look great, the ones he's designed. And these gloves, we were talking about it, we've talked about it so many times, but the gloves that they design for the UFC, obviously for submission-based fighters, like jiu-jitsu specialists, the gloves can be a little bit tricky. You know, like you find it harder to get, say, a D'Arce choke or another kind of choke that you need to get your hands in a certain place. It does make it tricky to get those with those styles of gloves. And Justin Gaethje's coach's gloves look... I need to know his name. I don't think I should refer to him in Justin Gaethje's coaches. But his design looks really good. You know, they look like lightweight. They look functional. They don't look like they would be too restrictive for a grappler. Because, you know, it allows the fingers to move from what I remember. And... instead of keeping the fingers rigid, which this is the other thing, you do have people like John Jones who do it on purpose, which you could go, oh, he's doing it by mistake because of the gloves the way they are. But then if you change the gloves to these ones where you can naturally close your hand, you can do that and it helps grapplers, then we know if somebody's poking somebody on the eye on purpose, that they are doing it on purpose. And then you can penalise somebody like that. Because at the moment, they'll be like, well, naturally my hand does that because of the glove. You know, whereas you can go, no, you are actually trying to poke him in the eye. That's you're actively trying to do that.
Definitely.
So I definitely think they should change them. I think it's just maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a matter of pride that they're not wanting to do that, and it's a shame because the sport has changed. It's changed from how it was when it started, because when it started, there was no gloves. Well, there was one guy who wore one glove on one hand.
Optional. Art Jimmerson.
Yeah.
Well, it was optional, wasn't it? Everything was optional. Do you know what I mean? Gi or no gi or whatever trousers, whatever you want to wear, which was mental.
Yeah, completely.
I would have gone in. I would have gone in a motorcycle helmet.
I just started headbutting people.
Yeah, military boots.
Yeah,
steel toe caps.
Yeah. Just kick people and headbutt people. But yeah, no, it's just.
I'd like it. I mean, I've said this a few times before. Do you know what I mean? I would still like it to be bare knuckle. Do you know what I mean? Tape, yes, but bare knuckle. I just think that, I don't know, because again, I like, the original slogan of as real as it gets. All right, well, let's make it a fight. Do you know what I mean? And if I meet someone outside in the street, I'm not going to be like, oh, hang on, aren't you going to put your gloves on?
It's true.
You know what I mean?
I think it's that balance that we talked about. I think we talked about it maybe in the first podcast where we were talking about sport versus a fight. And I think I completely get both ways of thinking. I definitely settle on the more sports side of it. But I completely understand that people like yourself who are like, I want it to be as close to reality as you can get. But I think if you get too close to reality, I'm not anti bare knuckle boxing or anti bare knuckle MMA. But I think if you take away too many of the rule sets, you start to get a bit too out of the realms of it being. See, I had a student who was saying this to me. He was like, "Oh, MMA is just brutal. That's what it is. It's just a brutal sport. It's no which it does press my buttons when people say that, because I'm like, he was saying there's not like a skill to it, which I was like, that is such yeah, exactly. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, in what way is it not a skill? And I think if you will have a lot of people who think that, unfortunately, still, it's taken a long time for mixed martial arts to be accepted in countries like France. And also in states, New York took a long time to become accepting of martial arts and mixed martial arts fighting. So I definitely look at it as a sport, and I would want it to be considered that. I'm one of the people who'd want to see more representation on a bigger scale for like jiu-jitsu. I'd love to see that in like the Olympics and stuff like that. But, I understand as well that there's a flip side of it where the whole point of it was to find out what as real as it gets. So it's a double-edged sword, and it kind of leads to another one of our questions, which is about knees to a downed opponent.
Yeah.
I think it shouldn't be. I think
you don't think it should be.
Yeah, I watch one championship as well, and that's great. I really do like it. But one's rules are kind of like Pride's rules, where you can't have elbows. And I'm kind of confused on that. Like, I don't understand why you would allow soccer kicks and knees to a down opponent. But
it's inconsistent for sure.
Yeah, I think you either have both of those. You have knees and elbows, or you keep it kind of the way it is now, because it links to the Aljamain Sterling knockout. Well, disqualification. Yeah. I think it's a weird one. Today, I'm saying I'd like it to stay the way it is. Tomorrow, I may say, actually, you should allow knees, because I've been watching more One Championship. It depends what I watch that week, I guess.
That's it. It depends if the fighters you like applied the knees or were kneed. And then that's how we change our view.
But exactly. If I'm watching One Championship and Mike Mouse is there, kneeing people in the head, I'm like, yeah, that's great.
Let's go. You liked Funkmaster, didn't you?
Yeah, not less so now, man. I'm not going to lie. He has really irritated me. Like, he's genuinely... I find this whole persona he's going down, this, like, because after the fight, he was so, like, I don't want to take the belt, I'm not the real champ, but then since like, a day after, he was like, I want to fight Henry Cejudo now, Jan shouldn't even get a rematch,
Isn't it? What is that about?
I can't believe he's going down that, because he's kind of flipped fans to dislike him, whereas I think most people would have been like, yeah, God, why did Jan knee him in the head? Most people would have been like, why? All he needed to
do was be quiet.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
And he would have gone into that rematch. The people would want him to win.
Yeah, just get your belt. Say, oh, you know what? Like, I don't really feel like I deserved that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then just shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Leave it.
Be like, I'm the champ.
They want to be on your side because he did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Jan did do something wrong. Those are the facts.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think. He's the champion, and that's it. And if he said to me, if he said to me personally, he was like, Ian, man, no. If he said in public, I'm the champ. It doesn't feel like I'm the champ, but I am the champ because he did an illegal knee. I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. But he's gone down like this whole line of becoming almost like a wrestling heel, and I'm just like, I really like him. I really do, and I'm still gonna support him in the rematch. But I'm like, mate, you gotta stop. You gotta stop because it doesn't pay him any favors, and it does link to the illegal knee. I think no matter what we say, we can discuss at great length. Should it be illegal? Because I know Mighty Mouse said, however he looks at it, knee should be legal in a ring. In that fight, it wasn't legal. What Jan did was illegal.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That fight transcends this discussion. Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't. Those were the rules at the time, and you agreed to the rules at the time. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's like we can't. I mean, in Hoist Gracie's fight against Chemo, he was pulling his hair.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We could sit here and bitch about it and say, oh, well, that shouldn't be allowed, blah, blah. Yeah, but it was. It was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't, he wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it was, so he did it. So arguing about that is silly.
Yeah.
It's a separate discussion. What Jan did was completely wrong.
Yeah.
And now there's a separate discussion as to whether in the future it should be allowed or not.
Completely.
It's
do you
important
think
to not
it should
confuse
be?
the two. I do. Yeah, I do. I think if you can, if Francis Ngannou can just take a big swing at you, if you can elbow someone in the head, if you can kick someone in the head, if they're on the floor and you can, and they're semi-unconscious and you can keep laying into them and elbow them.
True.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, what a silly thing. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, and I don't know, if I am wrong, listeners, feel free to just message me or something and tell me I'm wrong. I'm quite sure that in one championship, the rule is if they're face up, you can kick a knee to the head, but not if they're face down.
Okay.
Or something like that. Or I'm quite sure that there's
a stipulation.
A promotion where there is a promotion where that is the case.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite cool. But then the only tricky thing with that as well is to at what point. Then it's just you leave it open to interpretation. So let's say you're down on one knee.
Yeah.
And you can be face down, and then you very slowly raise your head, and then at what point do they say, "Oh, that's." Right there. That's the height where you're allowed to knee him in the head. It's like and then how's the fighter supposed to determine that in the heat of the moment? I think it needs to be one or the other. Personally,
I get what you mean.
For me, it's crack on.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting that one that comes to mind in terms of somebody trying to twist the rules, I guess, and it's from the same camp as Aljamain Sterling, is when Chris Weidman fought Gegard Mousasi. And Gegard had him in. Well, I would say Gegard was losing that fight, and I wanted Mousasi to win, but I would say he was losing that fight on the scorecards. But it got to a point where he had Weidman in sort of a small hold round the shoulder and was putting his weight on his back to pull him almost like they were bridging, making a little bridge. And Weidman was putting his hands on the floor so that Mousasi couldn't knee him because technically
it winds me up.
That's a down. But then
I get it. It's allowed, but it winds me up.
Mousasi pulled him up, lifted him up, so he could then knee him in the head and then bring him back down.
Clever.
So that happened. The ref quickly jumped in to be like, "Oh, whoa," because the ref thought his hands were still touching there. And Weidman acted as if he didn't know what date it was, and he was concussed. So that means if it was downed, it would be a win for him for a disqualification. But they watched a replay, and I think it was John McCarthy outside of the ring was saying to Dan, is it Molinaro? I can't pronounce his last name. But the referee, Big Dan, was saying to him...
Oh, Mergliotta.
That's it, He said to him in the ring, no, his hands weren't touching the ground. Those knees were completely legal. They were completely fine. And then Weidman quickly went, "Oh no, today's date's this." But then the doctor was like,
late, mate.
"Yeah," the doctor was like, "No, you were concussed, man." So then Mousasi won by TKO. And
well, there's a lesson there for everyone as well. Is that's what you get for being dishonest.
Yeah.
If Weidman was genuinely hurt, then the fight's over. And if he wasn't, don't pretend.
Yeah, exactly. And that stuff annoys me. They should make sure to be clear what a downed opponent means. If you're going to have knees illegal, you've got to make sure it makes sense. Because a guy putting his hands on the floor and being like, "Oh no, I'm downed, you can't kick me in the head," and he's crawling on all fours or something stupid like that. I've seen a fight where a guy, I think
Well.
it was in a Russian promotion, a guy just sat down, and the guy got really annoyed, so he just soccer kicked him in the head.
Too right, get out.
Yeah, that
Mate.
stuff's really annoying. That stuff's really annoying.
I know we're always shitting on him, but that's because he's a shit guy. So, like, like how John Jones used to come out in all of his fights. He'd come out, like, crawling almost with one hand on the floor, and that was the idea, wasn't it? It was like, you can't kick me type thing, and I'm like, get up. I hate it. And
this episode is literally just, I hate John Jones, or we hate John Jones.
We do.
We do.
But, like, so for me as well, like, I mean, you know, I don't mean to, you know, upset or insult anyone here. That's not my intention at all. But, like, me personally, I get frustrated with individual disciplines. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, I'll watch... I do like jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I love practicing it, but with the full knowledge that it's for MMA. I get frustrated watching or doing jiu-jitsu, and the opponent is, you know, butt scooting and, you know, waiting for butterfly and that. And I'm like, mate, I want to just lift you out of your rash guard right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to uppercut your chin into space. Like, you can't just sit there in front of me with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It does wind me up, all of that stuff. But then it's the same in a lot of things. Do you know what I mean? Like obviously it's within the sport and it's less silly, but in boxing it's like you can't take him down or kick his legs or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
I get frustrated with that stuff. But so for me especially, not being able to kick to a downed opponent or knee to a downed opponent, it encourages that kind of thing. You can just sit on the floor or, you know, just be on your hands and knees and wait for the opponent to engage. It's like, no, like you need to... I know it sounds harsh, but, you know, it's no secret that I like it to be a fight less so than a sport. I think you need to suffer the consequences of what would happen in a fight, unfortunately. You know what I mean? Don't do that. Don't go down onto all fours and not look at your opponent unless you're already out of it. In which case, if you're out of it, hopefully your opponent can recognise that.
It's interesting. Now that you're saying this stuff, I'm kind of like, no. It's because with jiu-jitsu, because obviously that's what I do. I don't do mixed martial arts. I love watching mixed martial arts, but I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I see that as a sport. You know what I mean? Like, I know people say, oh, you'll fight when you go to competition. And certainly when I'm like, if somebody tried to attack myself, like on a street, or anybody who does Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that person...
Oh, you're fucked, mate.
Yeah, that...
Jiu-jitsu don't work out there.
A Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner is going to be way better at, like, protecting themselves than, say, other people would be. But at the end of the day, like, my competition that I did before COVID happened, like, my first match was against this guy, and he... coincidentally, I think he also does a podcast. Just a weird coincidence. But he sat down immediately, and it kind of threw me because I was already in my head a lot, very nervous before competition, and I was very nervous about making weight stupidly. Like, I made it fine, so I don't know why I was so in my head. But, you know, the first match, he sat down, and it immediately threw me. I was like, oh man, like, what do I do? What do I do? Because he's just sat down, and I know what to do. It's just I panicked.
Did you kick him in the teeth?
Yeah. I punched him right in his face, and that was it. No, and the way I look at that is that's completely fine because it's jiu-jitsu. If this was mixed martial arts, that would be like, you should be able to hit him. Now that you're saying that, I'm like, you should be able to kick a downed opponent, because if you're going to be stupid enough to sit down in a mixed martial arts fight, you should be able to do. In Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I'm like, that's fine, because that's
it's one of them things where it's like, don't hate the player, hate the game. They're acting within the rule set, and like, you might think, oh, you're a bit of a knob for doing that, but it's like, well, it's in the rules. Do you know what I mean? Like, if someone's going to bend the rules to win, you know, and they're not cheating, then crack on. But I just think, for me personally, like, in jiu-jitsu, like butt scooting and that, like, it just makes a bit of a mockery of the sport. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite, you know, I think for someone who's an outsider who doesn't fully understand what's going on, you know what I mean, but maybe they try watching it for the first time, it makes it look very silly to see someone just like scooting their butt across the floor. It's like, oh, I thought these guys were fighting. But like, I have a similar opinion to. So slams aren't allowed in most jiu-jitsu competition, are they? You can't slam someone. If you're caught in a triangle or an armbar, you can't pick them up and slam them, can you?
Usually not, from what I understand.
Usually not.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that. Do you know what I mean? Because in a sense, that's a strike. You're striking them with the earth, with the ground. So I do understand that. But then I think something that should be considered is, okay, so if I manage to lift you up past waist height, they should let go. Because it's like, well, if it's a fight, like you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like we've all seen the Rampage Jackson
Yeah,
slam into
Jesus.
oblivion. Like if you don't let go, you're gonna die right now.
Yeah.
Like, you should let go. You know what I mean? So I think again that's another silly thing. It's like, okay, so if something's locked on, the most realistic defense, you know, is to use height and smash you down. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what? And then that's not allowed. Well, it's like, well then, what escape are they supposed to use? Sometimes there isn't an option. I just think that's a little silly. I'm not saying I have all the answers and I know the perfect way to correct that in jiu-jitsu competition, but I don't know, something needs to be done by someone smarter who can figure it out.
I mean,
I just think these things make a little bit of a mockery of the sport. It just makes it look a bit more silly, and it makes it very clear that it isn't a fight and it's just like a game of Twister. Do you know what I mean?
Possibly. I mean, it's an interesting take. I mean, I'm obviously going to sit more on the side of that I'm okay with those things. Just because sometimes I do prefer to sit and take the guard position and do the butt scoots, I guess. And
why would you tell me that, Ian?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be friends doing a podcast together. Now I know you're a butt scooter.
I don't do it a lot. I prefer, just, I guess, to go for, like, the top position and, like, use wrestling. Even though I'm not very good at it, but I prefer to do that. But I'm going to come from the side of it of being like, I find that okay, because I just think it's a part of jiu-jitsu. But I get what you mean, that for an outsider, if you're, let's say it was at the Olympics, and maybe some people would look at it and be like, what's going on there? Why are they doing that?
Yeah.
But I think it is finding that line between calling it a fight and calling it sport. I personally look at it all as like a competition of sport, and I get why it's called a fight, because it's closer to fighting than, say, football is. And football's a sport. But, it's the same with boxing. I see boxing as a sport. Like, I see boxing as sport. And I know people will be like, well, it's fighting, but it's that weird place where it's a combat sport. So,
fight is a broad term. That's just talking semantics.
Exactly. But I think people think about it when you hear somebody say, I'm going to competition, I'm going to have a fight. It's like, it's not, though. It's not. It's a combat sport, and the key word there is sport. Like, it's
only because sometimes it can be misleading, and if someone, so it's different, with like the key, what I would call the key martial arts. So like jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, boxing. Okay, you call that person a fighter, and then if they got in a fight, like out in the real world, this guy can probably handle himself. But when you start going down the route of some more bizarre martial arts, like for example, so that I'm not being biased, Capoeira, for example. I love Capoeira. I've done it for quite a long time. I wrote my dissertation on it. Please, if you're a Capoeirista, don't get in any fights, because it's not going to serve you. Do you know what I mean? It is not an efficient martial art. And there's a lot of them, Aikido and that. For me, it becomes dangerous to call those people fighters.
Yeah,
because
I understand.
Then you're assuming that if they got into an altercation, that they would be able to do something about it. And whilst I think learning any martial art is probably better than learning no martial art, because every martial art at its very base at least has the theory of you're learning how to move your body and find your balance and maybe a bit of range and timing. And, even if they're not ideal, an Aikido guy still has some sense of distance management and, like limb manipulation or something. So this guy's probably got a better chance than an untrained person, but I still think it's dangerous to call them a fighter.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like, MMA on Point, it kind of took me down a rabbit hole on YouTube a bit, but MMA on Point did like martial arts that aren't applicable to MMA, and I didn't like it because
I think I saw this. Was it the top 10 that aren't good for MMA? Yeah, I saw this, and the last ones were about chi.
Yeah, which chi control, which takes you down a real rabbit hole. But it put Capoeira quite high, which I was like, I think there's ones that they put before it that I think had less application than Capoeira in MMA. Because, like, I've seen Capoeira work in terms of, like, spinning kicks and stuff. And there's a lot of fighters. Okay. Yeah, but there's a lot of fighters like Anthony Pettis who would, like, point to Capoeira.
Sure, I think what the video was leaning toward, I completely get your point, that you can take aspects of Capoeira and apply it to your own game to make your game more round and have more flair. But you can't come out doing Capoeira.
No.
You can't come out, touch gloves and start doing the ginger in the middle of the ring.
No, definitely.
Please don't do that.
Don't do that. And I think that's why I was like, maybe the list, because the last 2 or 3 on the list were like fake martial arts. So I was kind of
Yeah.
like, I didn't like, perhaps, there was a lot of them actually, not just Capoeira, but there was quite a lot of them on there that I was like, that still has a level of application, I guess, but not as much.
Yeah.
And I get what they were saying. I guess you can't do like a huge 10 list of just fake martial arts, because usually fake martial arts get found out.
That was the thing for me, was when it got to like number 3 and it had all been like semi-legitimate martial arts, I was like, oh, what are 2 and 1 going to be? And they were both about like chi.
Yeah.
I was like, well, come on then. Like, if we're going to talk about that, I don't know, why are we not, what about being a magician?
Yeah.
Like, what about if I was a sorcerer? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to work very well. You're just getting silly now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it winds me up a little bit that those, let's air quotes, martial arts are even referred to as martial
they're
arts.
not martial arts. They are
it
not.
winds me up.
It winds me up.
It wound me up that they were considered. So I was like, oh, okay, so number 3 was actually number 1.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I can't actually remember now which one was voted the least effective.
It was the least
Chi.
Like before Chi.
I remember some of the ones that were in there. I know like Sistema was in there.
Krav Maga was in there.
Krav Maga was in there. Aikido was in there.
Yeah. I think Aikido may have been very high up. I think it was like, maybe Aikido was number 3, I think.
It was quite high.
Yeah, I think it may have been like number 3 in terms of like, because again, I don't want to be too harsh on Aikido.
Mate, we've got to be careful. We just shit on the same stuff. We shit on John Jones. We shit on Aikido. Oh my god, Krav Maga as well, man. Just makes me laugh so much. It's just like 1,000 different ways to strike someone to the groin.
Yeah. See, is it Karolina Kivchenko or Karolina?
Karol Kavich.
That's it, Karol
Polish
Kavich.
fighter.
She says Krav Maga is one of her like fighting
styles.
styles.
Yeah, but when she fights, there's no Krav Maga. Like,
exactly,
why are you lying?
I think it's also, it's really interesting. I've gone again, so we've kind of naturally got to this. We even said before the podcast, we were like, if we naturally get to talking about fake martial arts, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And we have naturally. It's interesting looking at China as like a sub-study of this fake martial arts stuff, because I went down a real rabbit hole watching fake martial arts, and there was a really great video on YouTube which I completely recommend to everybody listening about fake martial arts. And it was not just like a oh, look at these people, haha, it's so funny. It actually got really serious and dark, and I didn't realize how much of a messed up world fake martial arts is. And it's by a guy called, if you go to YouTube, his channel is like Super Eye Patch Wolf, which is a crazy name.
Super Eye Patch Wolf.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called that, but the video is called The Bizarre World of Fake Martial Arts. And
okay, I'll definitely be looking for that.
Yeah, he talks about like in China that with the Chinese government wanting to restore like parts of Chinese culture and doing the Great Restoration, they kind of forced people to do Tai Chi as like a legitimate fighting style that will beat people and like throw them around, and you can use your hands as like force weapons and flip them into the air. Now, Tai Chi has like, I'm not going to slack off Tai Chi and be like, oh, it's awful. Like,
no, you can slag off Tai Chi.
I think
as a tool for combat.
That's what I was about to say.
It has many applications beyond combat.
Applications should not be considered for combat. It has lots of applications for meditation and helping your like a soft sport to do, like an activity to do, not sport. But in terms of like fighting, it's genuinely like not something that I would ever tell somebody to like fight. Yeah, you do Tai Chi. And
I think we should make that clear, actually. Like, from this moment onward, more often than not, if we refer to something as like not useful or not effective, we do mean for fighting.
Yes.
Like, things can have, great application for your life. Like, if I said running was pointless, like, not that I would, because that's silly. It's just the first thing that came to mind. My meaning would obviously be for a fight. Unless, I mean, to be fair, that's wrong, because you could just outrun the guy. Like, don't fight. Like, you don't win, but you also don't lose.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
completely.
We mean not effective in a combat situation, which is my opinion on Tai Chi.
It's interesting with China, because that's been pushed forward, but they have, and they legitimately discredit mixed martial arts. They legitimately are like, no, it's brutal. It's like not like a true form of like martial arts. And
what does that even mean? What is a true? We didn't come up with it, so it's shit and wrong.
Yeah,
that's essentially. I'm so glad that you brought this up again, because I was a bit gutted that I didn't get to say my opinion on this. When you said you know some people who have this opinion that mixed martial arts is just like for brutes and it's not skillful and blah 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 blah. So this is absolutely going to trigger some people, but I don't care. Email us, tell me I'm a shit. That's fine. We'll have you on the show. That'll be fun. I don't directly mean to insult anyone, but like I've been training myself for how old am I? So I've been training myself for 12 years Muay Thai. I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for 11 years. My general observation has been people who have negative things to say about mixed martial arts are people who can't do it. So people, more often than not, it's people who have studied, one or maybe just some similar disciplines for a long time and never considered the other aspect of fighting. So they don't like the idea that they would have to start again.
Yeah.
Like this usually happens. I mean, living in the UK, we tend to be boxers and kickboxers here, don't we? Like grappling is quite new to the UK.
Grappling's a very American and South American thing.
100%, yeah. Oh, well, Russian, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, Russian with combat sambo as well. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so here we don't tend to have many grapplers, so it's often the case that like boxers, Thai boxers, kickboxers, whoever will come to me for some pad work, a bit of training. I obviously always suggest, would you be interested in learning some grappling, blah blah blah. Some of them do, some of them don't, and not always, but it's quite often the case that they don't, or they do one class and then they never do it again because they suddenly realise that none of anything that you've learned translates to jiu-jitsu or wrestling. It doesn't matter how hard you can punch or kick or your spatial awareness or anything. Once you're down, it's like, oh, I've got to start all like this is a whole new thing. None of my skills translate. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's quite frustrating for a lot of people, and then a lot of people tend to have this idea that MMA isn't skilled, and it's my opinion that it's the most skilled. You have to know the most out of anything to be good at mixed martial arts, because you have no idea what your opponent is good at. Your opponent might be a world-class black belt in jiu-jitsu, he might be a fucking golden gloves boxing champion, you have no idea, and you're just going to have to deal with whatever he brings you.
And it's fundamentally like the point of mixed martial arts was to find the best things that work from any martial arts background, and cut out the stuff that doesn't work to make it the most effective as possible. To get rid of,
which is why I think a lot of the traditional martial arts, which tends to be like Eastern traditional martial arts, that's where most of it came from, right? All your kung fu's, karates, they don't like it because mixed martial arts exposes what doesn't work, and a lot of what doesn't work is lots of the silly joint manipulations and point scoring kicks and quick movements that have no power behind them. And a lot of that got exposed, and it's not nice. Obviously, the Gracies exposed it all. What I was going to say as well is, I don't personally. I'm not a big fan of the way that jiu-jitsu has moved in terms of, we were talking about butt scooting and all of this that's going on, because jiu-jitsu, I keep saying jiu-jitsu and that's wrong. I need to say Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu in its early days, when the Gracies were doing the Gracie challenges, it wasn't about jiu-jitsu guy versus jiu-jitsu guy. It was about jiu-jitsu beats everything in any place. On the street, when it strikes, there's everything. And you go back, I recommend anyone to do this who hasn't, go onto YouTube and look for the Gracie challenge videos. And the basic idea was they were trying to prove that Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or Gracie jiu-jitsu specifically, was the best martial art for application to combat than anything else. So they were having kickboxers and kung fu and all sorts of different people come down. Look, if you think you can beat jiu-jitsu, come down and beat us. And they were fights, man. They weren't sparring matches. They weren't friendly. They were fights. Like, and you know what I mean? Anyone who refused to give up got battered. And that's kind of how the UFC started in 1993. They were like, these Gracie challenge videos are pretty mad. Like, let's take this worldwide and let's find out not only who's the baddest man on the planet, but what is the best martial art on the planet. And that's why they still say in the red corner, this man is a boxer, in the blue corner, this man's a wrestler, because the old tradition of, which one's better, boxing or wrestling? Let's find out. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. But
those videos, again, to add to that, if there's something I would say to watch, is definitely the documentary Choke, which is great.
Choke?
Yeah. That's about Rickson Gracie. And
okay, where can you find that?
I think it's on YouTube. I think you can find the whole thing on YouTube, and it's Rickson very young on, and it's kind of some of his weirdest stuff that he does, because he is very much into sitting in cold rivers and stuff like that. But if it does focus on those Gracie challenges and fighting people like that, and he talks about I can't remember what it was, but it was in Japan, again, it kind of links to what I was talking about with China and traditional martial arts. Because I was going to mention when I was talking about China, the fact that they have a Chinese champion there now in mixed martial arts, a form that they don't enjoy as much in Wei Li Zhang. And, I think they say that she's like Kung Fu, but she's definitely not. I think they just say that
definitely not.
I think they say that just because if for a Chinese audience, they can then be like, oh, she studies Kung Fu, but she's not. She's definitely not.
And respect the heritage.
Yeah, but she's definitely not. She definitely stands far more like a Thai boxer. She stands more like a very strong striking style in K1's kickboxing style fighting, which is what her record before she went into MMA. She did kickboxing, so that kind of makes sense.
There you go.
But yeah, in Choke, I can't remember what it was, but obviously in Japan they have a long history of wrestling there, and that's kind of where Pride came from as well, with like Hickson Gracie being a part of that, creating Pride and putting on like one of the biggest matches between traditional Japanese style wrestling, which was far more, I guess, linked to what we would imagine WWE to be. These fake matches where they put on, but by fake, I don't want to be like, oh, nothing, nobody got hurt. If you watch some of those old Japanese wrestling, Jesus, like they absolutely obliterated each other. But it was just that somebody was definitely gonna win beforehand. They knew that this person would do that. And obviously, one of the most famous people to transition from that into mixed martial arts is Sakuraba. That's where he started, and he moved over to mixed martial arts and then did that. So there was a legitimate application of what they were doing. It's just this, I can't remember what the guy's name was, but he completely called out the Gracies and was like, it's a load of rubbish, they can't do anything to me. And then Hickson really fucked him up. Really, really fucked him up. And there's pictures of him. Yeah, completely. So I recommend that as well. But it's just interesting when you go down that rabbit hole of fake martial arts. And that video talked about in China, there's a guy, I feel terrible not remembering his name, but he's not like anything special. And he himself would never claim he's like a mixed martial arts fighter. He's just a 41-year-old guy who does mixed martial arts as a training. And he's a radio host, I think, in China. And he was talking about how Tai Chi, its applications aren't there. And he got challenged by this Tai Chi master. And this Tai Chi master was like, how dare you dishonor Chinese tradition? So they had a fight. And as you would imagine, the MMA guy battered him. Just absolutely. Of
course. Oh, it's frustrating, man.
But the Chinese government then started acting against this MMA fighter. They started basically ruining his life, because he took a stand against Tai Chi and what's traditional in China. And honestly, fascinating to look at this guy. He has spent a long time fighting Tai Chi masters to prove a point. And the Chinese government forced him to wear traditional clown makeup to make him look like a joke when he's fighting. And he still pushes it to be like, no, this is not what we should be teaching people because it's not safe. It's not going to protect anybody. And
surely that makes them look worse when they dress him like a clown and he still smashes these serious-looking Tai Chi masters.
You'd think.
Does that not make it way worse?
The Chinese government aren't exactly.
That's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, the Chinese government get annoyed. The Chinese president or prime minister or the leader of China, he gets annoyed by the comparison to him looking like Winnie the Pooh. So I think this is not something that he's going to be.
I've seen a lot about that, actually. I saw that on South Park.
Yeah.
There's a South Park episode where Winnie the Pooh is in jail because everyone was saying he looked like the Pooh.
He genuinely gets really angry by it.
That's so funny.
The pictures of Winnie the Pooh are banned in China, basically.
That's so funny. Can you not just picture him sat in his room you're this really big important guy, you're the leader of one of the most wealthy and successful countries in the world, and he's just sitting in his room why do they keep saying I look like a yellow bear?
Yeah, and then his advisor's well, you do kind of. He's like, shut up.
just like, what are you doing in there? He's like, get out.
But it does take you down a rabbit hole, man. After I looked at that, which is I guess a cultural war in China, I guess it took me down to another level, which is just the people who not Tai Chi, but Chi bending, people who control the energy in your body. Those ones are
leave my energy alone. It's so annoying. Have you seen the video? Oh, because do you know Kiai as well? Well, I mean Kiai, like, there's a few different things about it. So Kiai is like a sound that I think it's karate or one form of karate. That's the sound they make when they strike. You know, Kiai like that.
Okay.
But then there's people who call themselves Kiai masters, and they believe that they can stun you or hurt you or whatever by using the word kiai and like basically like shouting at you, and they shout at you so hard that it stuns you or whatever.
Okay.
And this kiai master went to fight an MMA guy,
and God.
Again just got absolutely obliterated. And
man.
It's like it worries me though that like you often don't know, are these people really? But because who's the I can't remember his name. He's a really famous geezer, but I can't remember his name. There's this big, like, quite old chubby dude who calls himself a chi master. He's an American guy.
Yeah. I know exactly who you mean.
Do you know the guy I mean? He's got a really like nasally voice.
Yeah, his I've got the video in front of me because I went to my YouTube, but it didn't have the guy's name. I can see his face, and I don't want to turn it on because it'll make noise.
So this geezer anyway, like, so he'll be doing seminars or lessons or whatever. I can't believe how many people are there, like, watching and not laughing, like, you know, or taking part. And then when he's demonstrating how it works, and he's like, look, I'll knock this guy out, I'll send this guy down, I'll do this, whatever. And they do it, and you just think, like, are they, like, what's that person's student? They're obviously, like, paying him or whatever. Like, what are they gaining from taking part of pretending that it's working? Or is it some very strange thing in this person's mind where, because they believe it works? I really don't know. But that some reporter went to this guy and was like, that doesn't work, try it on me. And he tried to knock him out. And I mean, he was knocking everyone out from like 10 feet away, do you know what I mean? Just by waving his hands around. This guy, he went right up to his head, and his hands were like an inch from his head. He just stood there. He was like, nope, nothing. And then he tried to give that excuse, didn't he, about the toes? He was like, oh, what he might have done is he might have had one toe up and one toe down, which means his chi wasn't flowing.
Things.
So I can't. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, give it up. Like, how do you sleep at night? He's on the Horlicks.
I think it's actually more B than A. You know, where people getting paid to be there. I think it's a lot of people. It kind of falls into that sort of cult. You know, a cult. And I think you do see it a lot in martial arts, because you have almost like I'm trying to think of the way to, like, I don't want to go too much into like the grand histories of martial arts, but I think because a lot of the time martial arts people go to martial arts to identify how to defend themselves, and there's a genuine sense of like vulnerability. And that's why you choose to do a martial arts. And not that people are weak or anything who go to do martial arts, but there's an acceptance that if you get stopped in the street by somebody, you want to know how to protect yourself. And there's also people who do it for sport. I'm not saying everybody does that, but martial arts fundamentally, like, is about self-defense.
Of course, man. But if it was purely about fitness, you'd just go to the gym or go for a run or pick any other sport. Yeah, if you're doing martial arts, like, there's, you know, a kind of an unwritten rule that you're there to learn how to protect yourself.
And I think people gravitate towards these sort of personalities where it's like they give you almost an easy answer on how to defend yourself. And like, you can do it through controlling somebody by putting out your hand and screaming, and they'll just drop. And it's like a sense of like, wow, I'm now protected, I'm now safe, and I can feel safe in doing that. And
that's such an interesting point.
And I think that's kind of where cults come from too. And you can almost parallel like people who, like, because there's some weird cults in history, man. We don't want to go through the like Heaven's Gate cults and things like that, but people get gravitated towards giving people answers, basically. And I think that's what happens. People want to feel safe, and they don't want to. It's hard work to become a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or, you know, become I'm not sure what it is in Muay Thai, but to become like
there aren't belts in Muay Thai.
I didn't know that, but to become the best in Muay Thai, it takes time. It's not something that's easy, but people want to feel safe now, and they want to know that they're safe now, and I think that is a part of it.
So, mate, well, I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, that's really interesting. Like, what you said made me think of this. The people who go to those types of martial arts, that's kind of like the martial arts version of like a fad diet. Because if you go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and they say, how long will it take me to master this martial art? They'll say, probably 10 years. Like, to get your black belt, about 10 years. Or, you go to Muay Thai, how long to master this? Years. And they're just like, don't know if I can commit to that. I kind of want to be brilliant now. Yeah. And then they go to some bullshit martial art and they're like, yeah, just scream at the guy and he'll drop down. All you need to do is like poke him in the spleen 6, which is located somewhere on the wrist or something, and he'll drop and die. Look, watch me perform it on my, cult member, and he'll drop to the floor and die. And it's kind of like, I think people get goaded in because it sounds too easy. Just like a fad diet, how they're like, you can say to someone, look, control your calories, watch your macronutrients. Do you know what I mean? That the first pounds will come off because a lot of it will be water, and then it's hard work. But look, in a few months, you're going to start looking the way you want to look. Yeah. Or someone turns around and goes, "Nah, you can do it in a week.
Definitely.
You just got to drink horse piss and shove a carrot up your ass, and they think that that's going to work in a week and it's going to be healthy. And I think the same type of people or similar mindsets go to these martial arts where it's like, nah, 1 week, I'll show you how to press your thumb behind someone's ear and supposedly shut them down. And I'm like, if that was the case, do you not think that would happen a lot more in mixed martial arts? Like, if you're down on your hands and knees or something, or you're in turtle position, and I'm like, how am I going to get this guy? If it genuinely worked, I could just poke you behind your ear and you just shut off. Do you not think I'd fucking do it? Do you know what I mean? Like, what a load of shit. It does wind me up. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was, I think we're going to have very different viewpoints about this, or maybe not. Let's see. So I'm a big fan of no rankings, no belts. Mm-hmm. I like the way it's done in Muay Thai. Mm-hmm. So some westernized Muay Thai, some gyms have introduced belts, because I think belts at their very base, two things: they're a bullshit hierarchy system for like some level of respect that is some way of demonstrating your superiority. And then the other thing is, it's a fantastic sales technique. The same way that when you're playing a mobile game, like an app on your phone, you have constant little, you've reached level 2, and now it's jungle theme. They're like, ooh, it's like you just got your blue belt, and they're like, ooh, and that's why like all of the really like popularized martial arts like karate have more belts than jiu-jitsu. I don't even know all the belts. It's like white,
karate,
yellow,
Christ,
green. I don't know. There's so many. I've never stopped to learn them. In jiu-jitsu, there's only a few. But in jiu-jitsu, there's stripes, right? So it's broken down to give you so many steps. And you might be thinking, I'm not sure if I'm getting anywhere. And then they're like, here's a stripe. And you're like, I guess I'm getting somewhere. And you stay. Would as many people stay if it wasn't for the belts? I don't think so. So I like getting rid of the rankings. And it introduces this harsh reality, but it is reality, where you can train for years and years. Doesn't mean you're good. You might be knowledgeable, doesn't mean you're good. You get some guy like Nicky Rod who just comes in and he just goes, rah!
Yeah, he's crazy.
He smashes people, and it's like, it's very frustrating, but raw talent does exist. Look at Francis Ngannou. He just walked in. Look at Yoel Romero. I know he did wrestling, but he just walked into MMA in his like mid to late 30s, and he was like, guess I'm going to smash everybody now. You know what I mean? And he did really well. It's like, unfortunately, raw talent exists, and you have to listen to it. You can't just not give someone a belt. Like for you, for example, we were training together a long time, and obviously no gi, because I do exclusively no gi, but we were training a long time, and you went to London and you had great success. You were rolling with some people in different belts or whatever, and you were doing really well, but it still took a long time for you to get stripes at the start. And I'm thinking, well, that's bullshit, because I know that you had the ability. Like, you're fantastic at jiu-jitsu. It doesn't make sense that you're the rank that you are, except for the fact that you haven't been at that club for very long, which I think is a load of nonsense.
It's very nice of you to say. I will say thank you for that. That's nice of you to say. I wouldn't say I'm like fantastic at jiu-jitsu, not because I haven't got a belt or anything, but because I've gone to competition and haven't won. And I was going to say, to answer where do I sit on the belts, I love the team I train at. I love my members, the gang, the whole team there. I think they're great, and they're really nice people, and there's amazing coaches like Lorenzo and Richard who are just like amazing coaches, and I'm very lucky to have a team like that. And I'm lucky to have a friend like yourself who introduced me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because otherwise I would have never done it. If we weren't friends, I would have never heard of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It just would have never happened. So, it's very nice of you to say, the talent's there, etc. What I would say is that, like, I'm happy to be a white belt and I'm happy to have the stripe that I have. But I judge myself based on how I do at competitions. Because I think...
So you don't judge yourself on how you perform on the mat? Some people get stage fright, man. Some people are really clever and they go to do their exams and they don't do so well because they're not good at exams.
I mean, that's true, but then a part of it is to be able to deal with that. Because if you're in the street and somebody came up to you, you're going to get stage fright then. And I think, obviously, it's very different situations. Like getting stopped by somebody in the street and going to a competition and then being at open mats are three really different situations.
I was about to say, because I don't think being in competition represents being in a real fight either.
That kind of links to the beginning of the podcast, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think those are different anyway.
Yeah,
so I
refer
think
back to the start.
I think it's important to judge yourself on a whole. Do you know what I mean? Whatever you've done, judge yourself on that. Like if you're fantastic on the mat and you're rolling with people and you can get lots of good submissions and you can hold your own, and then you don't do so well in competition, I would argue that you just didn't do so well in that competition. Not that that's how bad you are.
No, obviously not. Like there's people who are going to be like, I know people who don't really want to go to competition, and that's fine. Like they shouldn't then be judged harshly because they don't want to do that. You know what I mean?
No.
It's just, I guess, for a personal achievement. I guess it's gauging what you want to get personally. So I get where you're coming from, and I think I understand Muay Thai doesn't have that grading system, and I understand that that's the way that I can get that having belts, particularly in karate, as you say, there's nuts colour of belts. I did karate when I was a kid. That was like the first martial arts. I think everybody kind of has karate as their first one that they ever go to. Yeah. And there was like...
It's because it's the only one your parents know the name of. I still get asked by my mum if I'm still doing karate.
Yeah,
How's your
in fairness
karate
to my
class?
dad, he does ask. When I was doing jiu-jitsu, he was always like, "Oh, you're doing jiu-jitsu tonight," but it took a little bit of time for him to get
to get from karate. Was it karate or was it kung fu?
No, karate. He never knew.
I get kung fu sometimes. I say I will chop off your hand.
So, like when I was there, I remember there was people with a yellow belt, and there was a green belt, and there was a purple belt, and there was a brown belt, and there was all these different color belts, and then they had like stripes on them as well. And I was like, I have no idea what is going on. Whereas, now obviously it's people who, there's white, there's blue, there's purple, there's brown, there's black, and I see where you're coming from. I kind of do still like that system or honor that system, I guess, because that's the way it's done. But I guess
But why is it the way it's done?
I don't know.
Saying it's good because it is not a fantastic argument.
Yeah, no, I guess it's true. I guess I've never.
Like it because it is.
I've never really sat down and thought about the fundamentals of like belts. I guess for me, I look at it as again, because my mind is more based on wanting to compete. I look at it as like, well, if I'm, and I know what your response will be to it. If I'm a white belt and I go into competition and the person who's opposite me is like a purple belt, there's just no, like, that person's going to smash me. That's what's going to happen. Which I guess from what you were saying before, there's an element of having to be smashed. But I guess that's what open mats are for. Going to an open mat and not going to a competition. You go to an open mat. I've rolled with purple belts, and being smashed, and that's the point of it. But I learn from doing that. I learn by going, say some of the purple belts in the gym that I train at, asking them would they like to roll, and nobody's told me no. Like, nobody's gone to me because it's a great gym. Nobody's gone to get away from me like you're a white belt. Nobody's ever done that. People have gone, yeah, cool, and we've rolled and we talk whilst we're doing it and we go through that sort of stuff. Yeah, competition, if I was to go against that, I think that could be incredibly disheartening if you just went into competition, you're a white belt. And that's why you have people who sandbag people and go into competitions who are like purple belts and pretend they're white belts. And that's a thing. And it's kind of sad that they have to do that, because it's kind of like, so you want to just pick on white belts, I guess, because these people aren't going to know.
Here's the thing, man, as well, though. So how do you think it works in, like, tennis or athletics? Like, there's no ranking. There's not like, I'm a blue belt in tennis. Do you know what I mean? You just... It just so happens that the guys who are fantastically good aren't in the league that you're playing in because they're too good to be in it. So, you would think that after at least a little while of there being no belts in a sport, you wouldn't be going into face purple belts, because why the hell is a purple belt at the event that you're competing at? If it's intended for beginners.
That's a really good point. most competitions aren't just for beginners. They have multiple like competitions.
Well, so this is the thing that would change, right? Or at least you could maybe have them on the same day. But I don't see why it needs to be white belt, or if it'd be like beginner, intermediate, advanced. You know what I mean? Like,
I guess that's just what the
it's
colours
up to
are,
you.
though, aren't they?
Well, this is the thing, though. So, yes, I agree. But so the problem for me isn't like the color, because that doesn't mean anything. I mean, blue. Like, blue doesn't mean anything. It's just like a symbol of how well you're doing. But for me, the thing that frustrates me is, so for example, like not all jiu-jitsu gyms do this, of course, but I've been in gyms where they won't let the white belts or even the blue belts roll with the higher belts, and I'm like, that's ridiculous, because there's some sort of strange respect system in place where it's disrespectful for the blue belt to roll with the brown belt, and in my opinion, that's bollocks.
Yeah.
And the reason it's bollocks is because the only reason that's the case is because there is a threat that the blue belt might beat the brown belt, and that makes the brown belt look shit, which makes the school look shit. And I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. If the blue belt is very talented, you should be able to roll with anyone who's equally talented.
Now, that's true.
And that winds me up.
I think there are places like that. I think there are other places which are like just a white belt class for white belts, or blue belts, I should say, as well.
Because, like a beginner's class. That's fine.
Because I think white belts, from my experience, I'm one of those people, we've all been one of those people who go in headstrong, and you might hurt somebody else or you might hurt yourself. And those classes are there to be like, look, you shouldn't, if you want, I've seen people before not be turned away, but be like discouraged from perhaps coming to a higher class just because they'll get hurt or they may hurt somebody else. More often than not, I think a white belt, I've done it. I've been really badly hurt. With my ankle got like really badly twisted when I was like grappling with somebody who was a higher grade. It's fine. I wasn't annoyed at him, and I chose to do that. You know what I mean? But I understand why somebody would maybe be like, maybe think about just doing more beginners classes before you do this one. You know, like before you come to this one, do more of these, because
you know what you should have done, didn't you?
What?
Not got caught in the heel hook.
Yeah, it actually wasn't a heel hook. He tried to.
What was it? A straight ankle lock?
No, he tried to take me down.
It wasn't even submission.
It wasn't even a submission, man. He tried to take me down, and my ankle got caught, and then it popped.
Oh, for fuck's sake, man. Well, okay, I can't help you then. But yes, so that's my thing, right? That's my thing. So, for example, if you had a tournament that was, beginner, intermediate, advanced, it's kind of down to the coach and the individual to decide where in that system you kind of fit in. And maybe you'll choose it wrong, go intermediate, and you quickly learn that you're not intermediate, you're still a beginner. But I think you should have the option. If you're a blue, like for example, let's say someone is sandbagging. Sometimes sandbagging isn't your fault. If you've been doing judo for years and years and you're fantastic at judo, then you start jiu-jitsu and you're a white belt and you get entered into white belt, that's bang out of order. Like, you should be able to recognise that whilst this guy's new to jiu-jitsu, he's very skilled because he's a very high level in judo. So, boom, blue belt. Well, I know it doesn't work perfectly like that, but you understand what I mean. He should be able to achieve his blue belt, brown belt, purple belt, faster.
Yeah.
If he's worthy of it. But they most schools have this thing in place where you can get your belt through just time, really. You just have to be there. Regardless of whether you're good or not, because you often get that. Do you mean 9 times out of 10, someone who's got a belt, is as good as their belt. But it also often happens that someone has a belt just because they've been there for years. And I know it's really frustrating, but sadly it happens that you get some people who enter a sport and it doesn't matter how hard they try, like, they're just not a natural to that sport, and their ceiling for ability is lower than other people's ceilings, which isn't a harsh thing to say because it's true for everything. I mean, everyone used to run all day as a kid. No one's as fast as Usain Bolt because your ceiling for how fast you will eventually be able to run is a lot slower than Usain Bolt's was. So it's the same for martial arts. So if you go into martial arts and you just struggle, man, jiu-jitsu, you just don't get it. Your body just won't let you do it as well as other people can do it. If you just stay there for years, a lot of schools will just give you the belts. You've been here for 5 years, here's your purple belt.
Yeah.
But he's not very good, and he'll still get done by some white belts who are not even come from a different martial art, but just athletic. You're just a strong guy who goes to the gym and has good cardio, and you'll beat people once you know a couple of submissions. And it's like, I don't know.
Well, no, I get what you mean. I firstly want to say my gym isn't like this at all in London. I just want to say, Wave isn't like that at all. It's a really great gym.
Oh, I'm not speaking about any gyms in particular.
No,
do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean. I just
there are some.
I just want to make clear, just in case anybody's listening and they're like, "God, Ian's a real piece of shit," you know.
I mean, you are a piece of shit, but that's got nothing to do with.
I was about to say I'm a piece of shit, but it's got nothing to do with it. So yeah, no, I think you do find jiu-jitsu, and not just jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of martial arts that are like that, and it links back to that fake martial arts thing about like these grandmasters of martial arts, and you do get it in jiu-jitsu. People who give themselves almost black belts and then say like, "Oh, I'm a black belt in this," and then they get shown up, and you know, I think I get where you're coming from completely. I completely get where you're coming from, and you know, it is one of those things. It's like there's always going to be an element that no matter how much you're going to train for something, there's going to be people who are naturally gifted at doing a certain sport.
Sure.
An example of this in my own personal life is I tried doing striking with yourself. It didn't click with me at all. I just could I could keep training it. We could have kept going and kept going and kept going, and I could have gone to do Muay Thai and I could have got better at it. But
you never would have been Anderson Silva.
No chance, because I just didn't have the coordination. It just wasn't in my head of how to do the foot movement, and it's a real skill, and you know, you will be able to develop that, but there will be people who are just naturally good at doing that. And I think I was just more drawn to grappling and jiu-jitsu because I enjoyed doing it and it was a lot more fun, and whereas striking, I just didn't click with it at all. And you're 100% right. There are gyms that are like that, and I think there are gyms that will be like, "Oh, we'll give somebody a belt because they've been there for that long." And I think it's a weird one. I've never really fought at great length about belts, to be honest. This is probably the longest I've fought about belts in since doing martial arts.
Because you're part of the cult, man.
Yeah,
part of the cult.
I'm part of the system because I just never.
I'm sure there'll be people listening who think, "Oh, well, obviously, you can't get the belt without learning the techniques." 100%. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But as a coach, like I've seen it 1,000 times where some people, I'll show them, just something simple. I'll show them how a triangle works, and then they watch me one time and they go, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense, like this." And then they show me and it's almost perfect. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly how a triangle works. Well done, you." They remember the foot position and the hand position. They remember the sequence, put the arm here, pull the head down, do this, whatever. Some people, I need to show them 50 times, and they come back the next week and they're just like, I don't remember. Please just show me again. That's what I mean. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's that guy who takes 50 times to learn it. I know it sounds really harsh, but you can't just give him a belt just for showing up. Because the belt symbolizes a level of ability that someone might not possess. But this other guy, let's say on a very, very basic, kind of spectrum, let's say they need to know how to do a double leg, one guard pass, how to shrimp and 3 submissions. Let's say I managed to teach all of that, and all of that qualifies you to get a blue belt, right? Let's just be completely broad. Let's say I managed to teach all of that to a student and he just gets it and he learns all of that in a week and he can do it perfectly. He should get his fucking blue belt. Like, I don't care about, the history of jiu-jitsu and all, it's this time-honoured thing and you have to be doing it at least 10 years to get your black belt and blah, blah, blah. No, this guy's fucking mustard at jiu-jitsu. Give him his blue belt because he's earned it, because he can do all of the skills necessary. But I feel like there's a lot of that missing. And obviously we know that a lot of blue belts go missing from jiu-jitsu. Once they get their blue belt, they're like, "Oh, done it. See you later."
Yeah,
and they never show up again.
So a lot of people quit after blue belt.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of gyms are hesitant to give people promotions because they feel like they'll lose them quicker. Like if you get, not a black belt, but once you see some level of success, it's a bit easier to step away and say, "Oh, well, that's enough of that. I've kind of had my success in that sphere." So they tried to keep them at white belt for longer.
Maybe.
So they just work and work and work to get their blue belts. Oh, mate, there's definitely a huge business aspect to belts. Do you know what I mean? I watched a really good video on it on YouTube. I cannot remember the name of it, but I'll find it and I'll send it to you. And it's not like a big unraveling of a conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? It's just an interesting. It compares the belt system to just sales and marketing tactics, because it's a fantastic tactic.
Yeah.
Just like as I said, when you're playing a game, every time it does level up, you think, "Yeah, fucking brilliant," or like you unlock a new character or some shit like that. It's all just silly things, really silly, childish things that keep you so hooked on that game. It's exactly the same with with jiu-jitsu, why isn't it just belts? What do I need a stripe for? What does the stripe grant me? It doesn't grant me anything. You get a stripe and you go home and you go like, yeah, oh, I've got a little bit of cloth on my cloth. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's so silly to me. So there aren't many jiu-jitsu gyms that don't have belts. There really aren't many. They're very hard to find.
Yeah.
I'm not a jiu-jitsu gym. I'm an MMA gym. I don't have belts.
No.
I've got bands for people who want them. Some people want something to kind of reflect their ability, and I do provide coloured bands, and I use the jiu-jitsu coloured system. No stripes, just the white, blue, purple, brown, black. And I do have bands for people who want them, but I don't force them on anyone, and I don't even mention it unless someone mentions it to me. Oh, do we get, rankings here? And then I'll tell them honestly, I'll say personally, I don't really like rankings. I just like to appreciate your talent and your ability. If you can beat that guy, then you can beat that guy. It doesn't matter what belt he is, which is how it works in Muay Thai. You mean there are no belts. Like, if you can smash that guy, you can smash that guy. It doesn't matter how you did it. I mean, like Francis Ngannou, he's the heavyweight champion of the world. It doesn't matter that he doesn't have the perfect technique and the perfect everything. What he's doing obviously fucking works. So let's not question it, and let's just say, well done, Francis. And
I can see where you come from. I can completely see where you come from. I think I do fall a bit more just because I like my gym and I like the way they do it there, and I enjoy that aspect of it. So I'm definitely going to sit more on the side of I'm fine with the belt system, but I can completely get where you're coming from. And I'm sure anybody listening won't also be like, God, what is he talking about? That's outrageous. And I hope they
fucking casual.
Yeah. And I hope they don't. And if they do, at least drop us an email to speak to us and speak to Dustin about it, because I'm sure you'd be happy to talk to people about it, and probably people a bit more well versed than myself, because I won't lie, I'm a white belt. I'm still training and I'm still learning, and I'm still somebody who's gaining that knowledge. Somebody who's perhaps been doing it a lot longer can explain the belts better than I can. I'm not somebody who's going to sit here and be like, I'm the chief expert in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because if anybody trains with me in my team, or used to a year ago, they know I'm not the be-all and end-all knowledge of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. I enjoy doing it. Mate. I enjoy rolling, and I love the sport. But I wouldn't be able to go, oh yeah, that's exactly why we do belts, or this is why it's important. I just do them because I enjoy the sport. If I get to go on a weekly basis, train, get to competition, get to compete with people, that's what matters. So
you're right.
Yeah, 100%. That's what my focus is. So if 1 week I'm a white belt and 1 week I'm a blue belt, that's great. That's awesome, and I'm going to be really happy about that. But all it means for me is just competing against different people. For me, the grind is always going to be the same. The grind's going to be the same. It's going in, it's training, it's doing the hard work, and whatever color belt I am or whatever stripe I have, it's going to be the same work. You have to still go to the same mat every day, and you have to still go against the same people every day, and that's all that matters. In my mind, anyway. The belt is a great achievement, and I don't want to discredit anything, and I'm not going to come out here and be like, no belts. As I say, I'm not as well versed in the knowledge of belt systems. I'm just there to train hard and get to competition. So, it is an interesting discussion, though, and it does stem from us discussing, the fake martial arts thing, because I do think that's a big aspect of how fake martial arts draw people in as well. Those chi bending people do pull people in by making them feel like they've accomplished something, pulling in oh yeah, you've become a grand assistant and now you can flip people and I think that is it's weird with martial arts. I think Joe Rogan and many other people have talked about it, where martial arts flitters between a genuine trial to see what the best form of protecting oneself and fighting is, but also does touch that line of cults where you have this one leader of your gym who then will tell you, this is the way you do it. And you do see that develop in martial arts. It's something that you can see 100% because they kind of follow these people. The most disturbing one I ever heard of this, and it is genuinely really disturbing. So not to go on if you don't want to hear disturbing stuff and you want to keep it funny, you skip ahead.
No, let's get dark. Let's do it.
There was, I can't remember his name, but he was a really famous guy in the 70s who he was on American TV show sort of like, you know, the one show that we would have over here where they'd have people come on and chat about stuff. This guy like said he was a psychic martial arts like practitioner, and he on live TV would move stuff with his pen, like move pens with his hands and like without touching them, and like move books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Oh man, that's crazy." And there's a particular bit where you're going to go, "Oh God," because there's a particular thing he said which already alarm bells. He said, you know, if he gets to train people from a very young age, he would be able to teach them how to. Yeah,
I know where this is going.
Yeah, and a investigative reporter. He apparently had like thousands of students, and like a investigative journalist. Can't say that very easily. A journalist went searching for how he does this because he didn't believe it. He was like, "There's no way this is real," and he worked out the guy actually like uses air, like breathing in and slowly blowing out to move stuff.
Yeah.
And it was very subtle that you wouldn't be able to do it like a guy see it like a guy with a if they're really
like
good.
It's impressive as a trick.
It's a trick. But he was saying it's martial artists. Now on live TV, I'll have to find this on live TV. He like,
mate, I've seen it, and he challenges him to do a book, and he puts all the polystyrene down. Is that the one?
No. This is like the journalist starts pretending to be able to do it too. And the guy who's been lying about it twigs that that's what's happened. The guy's figured him out, and he flips a table and like gets super angry. Wow. And then he admits that like, it was all a lie. And like he says when he was younger, like he went through a lot of abuse from his family, and like a way of running away from it was like this imaginary world he created where he was taught by these ancient masters on how to use martial arts. Which, if the story ended there, it would just be a really sad, like, somewhat funny, I guess, but very sad guy who faked all of this.
Right.
But it didn't end there. He got charged with multiple accounts of molestation against children.
Fantastic. That's where I thought.
Exactly when you hear that. And it's one of those things. It's like there is a really dark side to martial arts that I think can be missed by, and look, we've been doing it for a little bit. We've been talking about fake martial arts. We've been laughing at, the silly people. Like one of the best ones is the guy in the beach who just runs and face plants into this woman. She just gets wiped out by the guy. It is funny, but there are stuff like that where it's like, whoa, there is a sinister side to people faking martial arts.
Well, McDoja Life is making a documentary, isn't it? Have you seen that?
I didn't see that, no.
Yeah, they're in the process of making it, and obviously he shares a lot of really funny videos of fake martial arts, but one of the big things that he's looking to expose is there's a lot of like just sexual assault in martial arts. It's really common. It's really common. As well as just bullying, just assault. Like you see lots of videos of coaches who like, because martial arts is a really strange place where there's obviously going to be a lot of testosterone. That's one thing I love about jiu-jitsu is a really common kind of theme of jiu-jitsu is to leave your ego at the door. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. We're all mates. We're all here to learn, that type of thing, which I love. But martial arts on a whole has, obviously it's fighting, and men love to think they can fight, and it's easy for some guys to get some sense of I don't know, they feel a bit macho, and they like dominating other people. So you do unfortunately get a lot of coaches who just enjoy beating their students. Like they're a coach so that they can win, so they can beat their students, and often they get quite violent and that. And there's a lot of shit that goes on in martial arts at different schools, and like so I'm really looking forward to this McDoja Life documentary to come out and kind of expose it, and just to bring it to light a bit more, to give people an idea of what they're looking for, because people who have never done martial arts, when they walk into a gym, they ain't got a fucking clue what they're doing. Like on Napoleon Dynamite, like Rex Kwon Do. We watch it and we laugh, and I think most people laugh because of his personality. But if you just tone down his personality a little bit, I don't think that's far off a lot of fucking introductions to martial arts school. Try and hit, grab my arm, the other arm, my other arm. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, it's obviously really silly, really funny, but that fucking happens. People will go to do a demonstration, they'll be like, right, grab me. No, you grabbed me wrong. Grab me like this. And it's like, well, no, you should be able to be able to do it. I don't know.
It's interesting because we both love martial arts. I love doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's probably, other than not seeing my family and not seeing my partner as much, You know, it's probably one of the biggest things in my life I've missed, you know, doing martial arts.
Yeah.
And I think martial arts is a great thing. You know, if there's anything, you know, to take away from this episode of podcast, because this has been a bit more of a serious one in comparison to the last two, you know, if there's anything to take away from this podcast is that we want more people to do martial arts. You know,
do it, man.
We want
Go
more
do
people to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai or wrestling or any martial arts that you want to do that gives you confidence and makes you feel better about yourself and makes you feel better about being safe, etc. Don't do Tai Chi for that. That's all I'd say. But the you know, that we want people to do that. Particularly for me, I'd want people to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Mate, Jiu-Jitsu develops you as a person.
Yeah.
Like it's not just about your physical well-being or anything. Like there's something about Jiu-Jitsu, like when you've had someone on your back for 5 minutes trying to strangle you and pressing their weight down on you, and like in Jiu-Jitsu you can get into positions where you feel so helpless and there's nothing you can do, and there's this crazy weight on you, and this person is trying to strangle you or break your arm or something. Obviously it's not that intense, but that's the theory, right? That's the theory.
Well, yeah, it's
and
like simulating killing you. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And then you
kind
laugh
of
and do it again.
Yeah, and it kind of grounds you, because you realise that, like, I don't know, like kind of your health in your life is kind of really the only thing of significant value. And like when you go out into the real world and you get problems, it's like, well, this problem now seems quite small because I nearly died this morning. Do you know what I mean? Like it properly developed. And I think the most important thing about jiu-jitsu is how much it humbles you, man. It humbles you, because you see new guys, you know, white belts or whatever, come in and they so desperately don't want to lose, and they'll do anything not to lose, and they'll be squirming and lashing out, and they'll try and make excuses when they lose. They get tapped out and I'm really tired or whatever, and it's like, it's fine, man. Like it's fine. Like everyone tapping, you lost in theory, you lost that little roll, but you didn't lose. This isn't a competition. It's not a fight. We're all friends.
Yeah.
Calm down. Do you know what I mean? Like learn the thing. Tap when you lose, and man, it really it breaks down your ego, which is just fantastic for most people, I think, just to learn that you're not indestructible. No. You're not. You're just another person who has something to learn. And there's no lying. You can't fake jiu-jitsu.
No,
can't lie.
And for me, as somebody who, like, you know, I've suffered a lot with like really bad anxiety, and like I find jiu-jitsu, like, or any martial arts for anybody out there, I think it helps with that so much, because kind of linking to what you're saying, but in a different way. It's not that it humbles me, but because there's nothing else to think about in that moment. When you're rolling, there's nothing else in the world that I have to think about other than surviving that roll. And
it's like meditation.
Yeah, and if I don't, that's fine. But then I can just go again, and there's nothing else I need to worry about. There's nothing else that causes me anxiety in that moment of rolling, because that's all I need to think about. I don't need to think about work. I don't need to think about stresses of life. I can just be like, I'm here to do jiu-jitsu, and that's it. Once I leave, I can think about those other things. But usually it calms you down anyway, because you've got endorphins from that as well. So if there's anything people should take away from the conversation and this podcast, it's that you should do martial arts. Do jiu-jitsu. No, do martial arts. Do martial arts.
Do it.
But not to get pulled in by fake martial arts. You know, not to get pulled in by, you know, people telling you, I can scream at you and you'll drop. Or, you know, be wrapped up in these cults of personality that develop due to martial arts, because you do have it. And it is, I'm looking forward to that Dojo Life documentary, and I'll send you the one I watched on YouTube, because martial arts is an amazing thing and people should do it. And I encourage pretty much every one of my friends, my partner, everyone should do jiu-jitsu. It's amazing for self-defense. It just helps you in that situations that may be, you know, out in the street. It helps, but just don't get swept up in the wrong form of martial arts, you know.
Sure.
And yeah, I guess that's Ian's summary of what we've talked about.
Too right, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Mate, I said at the start of this episode, I was like, hopefully we're going to answer some questions we've been asked.
Man.
We've done one. We've done one question. We are useless, man.
Mate, we've lost our listener though, so it's fine. You know, this is literally just for us.
So we'll try and. I guess we'll try and do them next time because I don't want to rush through them because the questions I've been asked, they're not just like, oh, true or false, yes or no. They're good questions. They're good talking points. So we'll get to the next ones next time.
It's a good thing because the questions did lead us down this path. You know,
of course, yeah.
The questions of martial arts and, you know, knees to the floor did lead us down this path of what martial arts should you use and how should it happen, and then down the road of, you know, fake martial arts, what's effective, you know, and crazy people who scream at you, you know.
So basically, Steve wanted to know, should they change the UFC gloves? Response is, fuck belts, but maybe don't fuck belts. Maybe they're good, but also maybe they're not good. And do martial arts, but don't do all martial arts. Do some good ones. Yeah. You don't know which ones are good.
Also,
sure they're good.
There's a cultural war in China where Winnie the Pooh is involved.
Yeah.
You know, that's something to take away from this.
So
as well.
hopefully, Steve. Oh, and just quickly, you were saying about the guy who said he could move things with his mind and he was using breath.
Yeah.
So there's another. It may well be the same fucking guy. I don't know, but there's another guy on YouTube who said he could do the same thing, and he was on stage. He was on live TV, and he was turning pages in books and whatnot. And this guy, I'm sure he was a scientist. He was on there just to basically... you could tell he was so unhappy. He was like, as if this is my career, like telling a fucking stupid magician that he can't do this. But anyway, he was like, look, okay, I'll add a really simple element. He just put little polystyrene peanuts around the page. And he was like, go on, do it now. And obviously he couldn't because he'd blow the polystyrene peanuts off the table.
It may be the same guy, actually.
Yeah, and then the guy was all trying to go like, oh no, like, I'm pretty sure the static from the peanuts or whatever is like affecting it, and I can't. And it's like, well, you know, what a load of bollocks. So that was the video I was certainly watching. The other thing I wanted to say was when we were discussing belts. Hopefully, one thing that we can agree on is that quite often belts in some martial arts, such as Taekwondo, for example, are an absolute load of bollocks. if you can have a black belt like at the age of like 10 or 12. Your martial art is a joke. I'm sorry. like Taekwondo is not a joke. You know what I mean? Some guy, if you're well trained in Taekwondo, in a striking match, you're a pretty worthy adversary. Do you know what I mean? It's going to take some doing. I don't think it's as efficient as boxing or Muay Thai or Lethwei or anything, but it's pretty good. But you can't be handing out black belts to kids. Like, I don't care. I don't care if this kid's a black belt. I'm going to boot him in the face. Like, it's not going to... You know what I mean? If you're 10... You can't be a black belt. I'm sorry. There's no way. I don't understand the reasoning.
I love in this conversation. I'm just going to be the guy who's like not more reasonable, but more just like, yeah, you know, belts are all right. I don't mind belts, and you're like, fuck belts and fuck me. I'm going to punch him in the face.
Well, my point here is just that don't give children black belts. Like, a black belt represents someone who's mastered a martial art.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah,
I don't care what martial art. I don't think there's any martial art with a belt system where black isn't the highest.
Yeah, no.
Unless obviously you get red, like for like a it's like an honorary thing, isn't it? It's like if you're a founder of jiu-jitsu or something, you get a red. But black is the highest. To say you're a master of a martial art, really? You're not an adult, but you've mastered karate or taekwondo or whatever you're doing. No, like, sorry. But how am I supposed to take you seriously? I'm not having it.
Yeah.
Like, if your body hasn't finished developing, like if your body doesn't work properly yet, then you can't have mastered a martial art. That's ridiculous.
It's Dustin's take of the week. I'm not having it. I'm not,
Dustin's take of the week.
Yeah, I'm not having it. I do agree though. I think again, it's
what's the name of this episode going to be? Like, boot a kid in the face. I don't know.
Earlier on, I thought it was going to be we all hate John Jones, but I don't know now. I don't know if that's the theme of this podcast.
We do fucking hate John Jones. Or shit. It could just be called shit on Aikido, or shit on John Jones.
Yeah, shit on John Jones.
Fuck Aikido and fuck John Jones. That's what we'll call it.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well,
right,
great.
I think that probably wrapped it up pretty good.
I think we should definitely end on you saying you'd kick a kid in the face. I think that's definitely how we should end this podcast. That's a good way to round up.
I wouldn't though. Please, no one come looking at my door.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Dustin's take of the week. I'm gonna kick a kid in the face.
I'm just saying. Theoretically, I could, like, black belt or not. I don't care about your black belt. I don't care.
I don't care. I'm kicking
care.
you in the face. It's gonna happen.
I'm gonna kick you in the face.
Oh, okay.
Even if you're a downed opponent.
Yeah.
Even if your hands on the floor.
Tell you what.
If anything, that just makes it easier.
If anything, we've linked back. You'd kick a downed kid on the floor. That's fine.
Even if they were a black belt.
Even if they're a black belt.
Yeah. Right, so we'll get to... By the way, Steve's a made-up name. Steve's not.
Real. Maybe it's Steve.
You know, all names are made up.
You know.
But, yeah, I'm sure all names are made up.
Oh, man.
They weren't here before people were. Like, there were people then names. But, like, Steve isn't a real person. But
if you do have any
to the other
questions
questions next time.
Yeah, and
email us, and we will do them.
We will do them. This one kind of got away from us. I think we went in with, we'll answer some questions, and it just spiraled out of control.
Well, at the start, I was thinking, we've got like 5 or 6 questions, and we've got some other topics we want to bring up. I hope this is going to be enough to fill an episode. We've done 1 question.
Yeah, we've done 1 question.
Wow.
And we didn't even get to the stuff we were like, oh, we'll be getting back to gym soon. We should talk about that. Nope, that's not happening. Nope. That's not today.
Useless, man. So a lot more episodes to come. And, hopefully soon, Scott McHugh.
Yes.
Boxer.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah,
cool. Right, should we actually round this off then?
Yeah.
We're looping around in circles here.
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet.
Cool.
Right. See ya.
I've got nothing else to add to that, so bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you later.
See you later. Thanks for listening to the Combat Casuals podcast.
To get involved with the Ultimate Fighting conversation, email us at combatcasuals@outlook.com.
We can answer your questions in our next podcast.
Or perhaps even have you on the show.
Be sure to follow or subscribe or support us however you can.
Thank you to Me Against the World for our theme music.
Catch you next time.